Once upon a time, there was a woman who woke up one morning and couldn't remember her own name. Not because of an accident, not because of illness, but because for 20 years everyone around her had called her something else. And the terrifying part? She had started to believe them. This isn't just her story. In some way, it's the story of almost every person who has ever lived. There's a concept that psychologists have studied for decades, quietly, without much noise. They call it identity erosion. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens the way a river shapes a rock, slowly, invisibly, until one day you look in the mirror and something feels missing, but you can't quite name what it is. The woman's name was Amara. She grew up in a small community where names carried deep meaning. Her name meant grace. It meant strength. It was chosen by her grandmother, who had survived things most people only read about in books. But when Amara moved to a new city at 19, people struggled to pronounce it, so they shortened it. Then they changed it. And Amara, wanting to belong, let them. What started as a small compromise grew into something larger. She changed the way she dressed, then the way she spoke, then the stories she told about herself at dinner parties. She curated a version of herself that was easier for others to hold. And for a while, it worked. She was liked. She was included. She felt successful. But there was a quiet ache that never left. Here's what science tells us about that ache. Researchers who study the psychology of self-continuity found that when people feel disconnected from who they were, they experience a specific kind of grief. Not grief for a person they lost, grief for a self they abandoned. It's a grief that most people can't explain because our culture doesn't have many words for it. We talk about losing things outside of us, jobs, relationships, opportunities. But losing yourself from the inside is something most people go through alone, in silence. What makes Amara's story remarkable is what happened next. One evening, she found an old letter in a box her mother had sent from home. It was written by her grandmother, decades before Amara was born. The letter wasn't addressed to anyone. It was more like a confession. Her grandmother wrote about a time when she, too, had hidden who she was to survive. She wrote about the cost of that hiding. And then she wrote something that stopped Amara completely. She wrote, "The self you bury doesn't die. It waits." Amara read that line 3 times because she had felt it, that waiting, at presence beneath the surface of the person she had performed for years. Psychologists who study resilience have found something quietly profound. People who maintain a thread of connection to their core identity, even a thin thread, recover from hardship faster. They adapt without disappearing. They bend without breaking. That thread doesn't have to be loud or obvious. It just has to be real. Amara began by doing something small. She started telling people her real name again, the full version, the one her grandmother chose. And something unexpected happened. People didn't struggle with it the way she had feared. Most of them simply learned it. A few even asked what it meant. And when she told them, something opened in the conversation that had never been there before. She hadn't realized how much of herself she had been keeping from people, and how much people actually wanted to meet her. Identity is not a fixed thing. It grows, shifts, and evolves. But there is a difference between growth and erasure. Growth feels like expansion. Erasure feels like forgetting. The most enduring versions of people, the ones history remembers, the ones we love in our own lives, were rarely the ones who blended in perfectly. They were the ones who stayed curious about who they were, even when the world tried to answer that question for them. The self you bury doesn't die. It waits, and it is never too late to come back to it.